Hi, Kim. It's great to see you. Hi, everyone else who wants to join. This is Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. We're learning about the holiday of Shavuot, um, literally the holiday of the weeks, and it's going to start on Tuesday night in Israel, go until Wednesday night. As we know, in Torah, in the book of Genesis, God says there was evening and there was morning one day. So each day, the day begins at night. So Shabbos begins in the evening and goes until Saturday night. So the holidays begin in the evening. Shavuot will begin on Tuesday night. It'll go until Wednesday night, but that's in Israel. Outside of Israel, it goes for 2 days. So it'll start on Tuesday night and go until Thursday night. The reason for that is in the exile, the new moon was declared in Jerusalem by the Sanhedrin, and they would declare it by witnesses. Witnesses would come before the Sanhedrin, and they would say, "We saw the new moon at such and such time." It was done several times during the year, not every month, but usually before the holidays, in order to dial in the holidays and make sure that the calendar was set. We were commanded in the Torah to set the calendar according to witnesses appearing before this Beit Din, before the Sanhedrin. And but the problem is that was in Jerusalem. What about outside of Jerusalem? So they would have a series of bonfires set up, spreading out from Jerusalem, and they would also have torches. So on Mount Zion, the Sanhedrin would say, "New moon," and you would have a guy take two torches, wave them. A guy would see that, and he would wave two torches, and so on and so on and so on. And that would go all the way out to the exile. But because that takes time, they weren't really sure in the exile if they were getting the announcement on time. And there was always problems with visibility, if there was fog, if there was rain. So they were never really totally sure. So in order to make sure that they did get the holiday in at the right time, as it were, they would do an extra day of the holiday. So Shavuot in Israel is one day. Shavuot outside of Israel is 2 days. If it doesn't make sense to you, that's probably because you're thinking about it. It kind of doesn't make sense, but that's what we've got. I think there are a lot of hidden reasons as to why they keep 2 days of the holiday outside of Israel. It's also incredibly problematic because they'll be saying blessings that are not necessary, which is a big no-no. There's a lot of other problems with it, but that's what we do. I'm sure there are hidden reasons for it, but that's what we were told is because of the calendar. So Shavuot, let's just keep it simple, begins Tuesday night and goes until Thursday night. It's called the Feast of Weeks. Its date is not specifically mentioned in the Torah. It is one of the three pilgrimage feasts when the Jews would go up to the temple. It was like Thanksgiving 3 times a year, but the head of the family who sat at the head of the table was the big guy, God. So 3 times a year we would go up to Jerusalem. The Jewish nation is basically a big family. And I want to start off, usually I give all the details and all the practical points and the basics at first, but with Shavuot, I can't help myself. I can't hold myself back. I want to jump into a very, very deep theological concept right at the get-go. Okay, and something that I don't think many non-Jews understand about Judaism, and I don't think many non-religious Jews understand about Judaism and Torah, but it's really so essential to how we view Torah. Okay, so this is the deal. There's a sugya in the Gemara. Like I said, the day is not specifically given. In Christianity, they refer to Shavuot as the Pentecost. Why? Because it's 50 days after Passover. In the Torah, they don't specifically mention the day, though the day is described as the day is definitely mentioned and talked about as Chag Shavuot, the festival of the weeks, Chag Katsir, festival of reaping, Chag Bikurim, Yom Bikurim, because Bikurim is the first fruits, it's the day we bring the first fruits. That being said, it's not told specifically which day. And I have a personal pet peeve, which is everyone, they count, we have the mitzvah that I explained last week, counting the Omer. We're supposed to count 7 complete weeks. 7 is a very special number. 7 complete weeks between Pesach and Shavuot. So we start counting after the first day of, on the second day of Passover, after the first day ends. After we do the Leil Seder the next day, at night, we start counting the Omer, 7 complete weeks. And the 50th day, after we finish the 77 weeks, boom, the 50th day, that is Shavuot. Okay, but it doesn't mention the specific day. And those, at the end, that's when the beginning is the barley harvest, and the Shavuot represents the beginning of the wheat harvest. Okay, and we'll get into the details of that later and what that symbolizes, but it's an agricultural festival, and like all agricultural festivals, it's focused on the temple and the temple service. That being said, Jews have a habit of they count the Omer, they do Passover, and it's all about the agriculture, all about the grains, and all about, and then we get to Shavuot and it's the giving of the Torah. The giving of the Torah is not mentioned in the Torah as being connected to Shavuot. Where do we get that from? We get that from a Midrash. The Midrash is brought in the Talmud in Masechet Shabbat, page 88a. Maybe one day I'll explain to you how they count pages in the Talmud. It's not normal. But what does the Talmud say? I'm not going to read it in Aramaic. I can, there's no reason to. So it cites Exodus 19:17. Exodus 19:17 says, let me pull up my verse. ויהי ביום השלישי ביות הבוקר, ויהי קולות ברקים וענן כבד על ההר, וכל השופר חזק מאוד, והחרד כל העם אשר במחנה. On the third day, this is describing the giving of the Torah, on the third day, as morning dawned, there was thunder and lightning and a dense cloud upon the mountains, and a very large blast of the horn, and all the people in the camp were afraid. They trembled. ויוצא משה את העם לקראת האלוהים מן המחנה ויתייצבו בתחתית ההר. Moses led the people out of the camp toward God. I'm reading from, as I said, Exodus 19:18. Moses led the people out of the camp toward God, and they took their places. This is always translated tachtit hahar, at the foot of the mountain. But what does tachtit hahar really mean? Tachat means underneath. If you're in Israel, you have to be careful. That word also means your tushy, your bottom. But tachat means under. So when the Torah says betachtit hahar, it's translated as they stood at the foot of the mountain. But a more precise, correct translation should be they stood under the mountain. Very strange. So in the Talmud, it says, Rav Avdimi Bar Chama Bar Chasa said, the Jewish people actually stood beneath the mountain. And what do we learn from this verse? That Hashem turned the mountain upside down over the Jews like a bucket, like a tub, like a huge bucket over their head. And he said to them, if you accept, okay, I'll get back to this. If you accept the Torah, hey, it's great. But if you don't accept the Torah, this is where you're going to be buried. When we talk about the giving of the Torah, our approach to the Torah is not one of faith. We do not choose to believe. That's not an option for us. God did not give us an option. He told us, and this is what I wanted to say. Where do they get this from? Well, they get this from a verse in oh gosh, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to find this in an actual Bible. Enough computers, we're going to open a book with pages. Okay. If you look at the story of creation, when God created the world, what did he say? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Yada, 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 we all know it. And after the first day, God said, Vayhi erev vayhi boker yom echad. And there was evening and there was morning, day one. Okay. Second day, Vayhi erev vayhi boker yom sheni. There was evening and there was morning, second day. And this goes on, third day, fourth day, fifth day, until you get to the sixth day. Okay, and this is where it gets special. This is, if you're looking, it's Genesis chapter 1, verse 31. Okay, we're talking about the sixth day, Thursday night. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. No, this is Friday night. God has finished everything. And he's just about ready to take his Shabbat. He's just about ready to take Shabbat in. It's his rest day, but before he takes a rest, what does the Torah say? Hashem saw everything he did. He saw it was very good. Vayhi'el vayboker yom ha-shishi. Now, up until now, we said Yom Echad, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, Yom Revi'i, Yom Chamishi. All of a sudden, it says Yom Ha-Shishi, the sixth day. Why the? What is special about this day that we haven't seen before? So, according to the Midrash, this was the sixth day referred to in the creation of the world, was the sixth day of the month of Sivan, which is Shavuot, which is, according to the Midrash, when the Jews received the Torah. What we're saying is, according to the Midrash, is that when God created the world, he created the world. But when he got to the sixth day, he said, I'm going to have to wait and see how this turns out. I mean, I did a great job. Everything was tov ma'od. Everything was really good. But I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know how it's going to turn out. God said, why did I create the world? I created the world for Torah. But I need someone to bring the Torah in. And if they don't, and this is just a lump of mud that I could get rid of, or should get rid of. So I'm going to wait and see. When am I going to wait until? I'm going to wait till the sixth day of the month of Sivan. When God created the world, on the sixth day, he said, I'm going to wait until the sixth day of the month of Sivan, when Am Yisrael comes out of Egypt and stands at Mount Sinai. All of creation is dependent on what happens there. All of creation. If the Jews accept the Torah, great, then the world has a reason to exist. But if they don't, there's no reason for the world to exist, and I'll just destroy it right there. And it'll go back to Tohu Vavohu, it'll go back to the pre-creative mess that it was before. According to Kabbalah, according to the esoteric learnings, Hashem did several iterations of creation before this one. So we do not perform Torah. There's a big, when we approach the Torah, we don't have choice. We have a concept, can I take a vow, an oath, to keep kosher? And the answer is no. I can't take a vow and say, I, God forbid, I'm just saying this word, but I don't mean it, swear to keep kosher. I can't. Why not? I already took that oath. I took that oath on the 6th of Sivan, when my neshama, when my soul was at Mount Sinai. I swore to keep the Torah. So I can't take that oath again. We learned that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, was an Eved Hashem. He was a slave of God. Yehoshua, when he took over, was described as a Misharet Hashem, a servant of God. You would think, on social standing, a slave is higher than a servant is higher than a slave. He's free. He can come and go. He can quit, get a new job. A slave doesn't have those options. So in society, the servant is certainly higher than a slave. But when it comes to Hashem, when it comes to serving God, a slave is much higher. And also a slave is always looking at his master. What does he need? What does he want now? What does he want now? Oh, I know precisely how he likes his coffee in the morning. I know precisely how he likes his bed meal. I know what clothes he's going to wear today. That's how close a slave is to his master. When we took an oath at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, we took an oath under duress. We had no choice. I have to do the mitzvahs. I'm a slave. And a person who is commanded to do a mitzvah and performs it is actually on a higher level than someone who does it out of a choice. Free choice is a lower level of serving God. Now, I know this is all coming from the Talmud, from the Midrash, from the end. You're like, So I'll ask you a personal question. You serve God, I'm sure of it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be wasting your spare time listening to Bible lessons. Do you really have free choice? Did you really choose to do this? Or were you absolutely compelled, knowing that you have a master and you are his slave? You have no choice. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, and it has changed you forever. You have God's thumbprint on your soul. You have no choice. You know, it's like, yeah, I knew it, kid. I knew it. I was talking exactly to you. People, religious people, the good ones I know, it's like they really have no choice. It's like, it's like you go to a store and, they give you the wrong change and you end up walking away with too much money, or they give you the wrong bill. Do you really have a choice? You have no choice. It's almost like you look up, you're like, okay, yeah, that was an easy one. And you turn around, you give back, and you give them the money. Okay, in everything, you don't have a choice. My life would be so much easier. I love shrimp. Bacon, oh my gosh. I don't have a choice. I can't touch it. But I'll let you in on a bigger secret. What do we learn from this? You don't have a choice. But by doing this, you literally save the world. If Israel, if the nation of Israel had not accepted the Torah at Mount Sinai, where do you think the world would be today? And if you look around today, who are the people who are destroying the world? It's not the religious people. Who are the people who are killing babies? Who are the people who are calling for war? Who are the people supporting blatant terrorists? Who are these people? They're the people who not only aren't religious, they hate the Torah. Why? Because they want to be free. This concept of being a slave, of not having a choice, it is the thing that drives them crazy, that gets them out of bed in the morning angry. If we had never received the Torah on the 6th of Sivan at Mount Sinai, where would the world be today? The only thing keeping the world from jumping right over the edge into the abyss, the only thing stopping it is the 5 books of Moses, which so many people think, I know it, I've read the Bible. Have you really? Are you living the Bible? Do you know who your master is? So that's, even though I don't like connecting Shavuot, Kim, you're so sweet. Kim wrote, I'm thankful the children of Israel were willing to receive the Torah. Well, first of all, we weren't really willing. It wasn't much of a choice. And we were commanded to be a light unto the nations, to be a kingdom of priests. Priests don't make their own sacrifices. Priests, if they don't do it for other people, they're out of business. If we don't spread the light of Torah, and that was the other thing we learned from the Talmud. On Shavuot, when we received the Torah under duress, had we not, it wouldn't have just been us that died. The entire world would have been destroyed. So when you do whatever it is you do to connect to God, even the tiniest little thing, you're walking down the street and do something nice for someone. You sing a little, your favorite song. You smile at someone and make their day better. You bring a sacrifice to the temple. Whatever it is we get to do. We're saving the world, literally, quite literally. I also want to emphasize that if you're saving the world, you have to love the world. You shouldn't do it in anger and say, oh, those people. You have to do it out of love, but when you do it out of love, you're saving the world. The other very, very interesting thing about this whole section is the Talmud asks, okay, so that's, we receive, we don't call it receiving the Torah at Sinai. We don't call it receiving the Torah at Sinai. We call it Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah at Sinai, because we really didn't receive it. We didn't have much choice. So the Talmud asks, so when did the Talmud is like the Talmud, it says the craziest things. So they say, well, wait a second. if the Jews can say that we were coerced, we accepted the Torah under duress, so it's not binding. It's not a legally binding agreement. You can't make someone keep a contract that they signed under duress. So when we don't keep the Torah, we can turn around to God and say, well, we didn't really want it in the first place. So along comes Rav, and Rav says, no, no, no. They did willingly accept the Torah. When did we willingly accept the Torah? Okay. The book of Esther, 9:27. Okay. It says, Kaimu v'kiblu hayudim aleim ya'azaram v'akol hanilvim aleim v'lo ya'avor liot osim et shnei hayamim ha'ele kichtabam u'chizmanam b'chol shana v'shana. The Jews undertook and irrevocably, not only undertook, they actually, kaimu means also they acted upon it. They performed it. They did it. The Jews undertook and irrevocably received upon themselves, obligated themselves, and all of their descendants, and all who might join them, meaning the Gerim, the converts, to observe these 2 days in the manner prescribed and at the proper time each year. So what's very interesting, we're going to assume that the men in the Talmud had learned the Bible. They knew that this verse was not talking about the Torah at all. When it said that the Jews performed and obligated themselves and all their descendants, it was talking about the holiday of Purim. Now, why is this interesting? Purim is an interesting holiday. Why? Because Purim, it's called Megillat Esther. Esther comes from the word hidden. The name of God does not appear in the book of Esther. God himself is hidden. Everything is done by the people. So what we're saying in Shavuot is that at Matan Torah, at the giving of Torah, it was all about God. The interesting thing about, pardon me, the interesting thing about the Exodus from Egypt, it was all God. It was all God, meaning nature didn't have its express will. It was acting not unlike nature because God was commanding it to be so. The Jews didn't really have to do anything until the Leil Seder. Even the Reed Sea, there's a Midrash that God walked up to the Reed Sea and said, split. And the Reed Sea said, don't want to. God said, why not? The Reed Sea said, because that's not what I do. I'm a sea. I'm water. I don't split. God said, I created you. And when I created you, I had in mind that at this time you would split. So he said, okay, so let's split. And then after the Jews passed through, God said, okay, go back. And the sea said, no, I want to keep doing your will. So God had to force the sea to go back. It was all about God's will. And when we came to Matan Torah, to Mount Sinai, it was again all about God's will. Think about it. You're sitting there, you could see, according to the Midrash, you could see the thunder, not just see the lightning, but see thunder. Yeah. Oh yeah, Mount Sinai was a wedding ceremony. So okay, I'll get into that. But there's an interesting thing. In a Jewish wedding ceremony, you don't exchange rings. It is an act of acquisition done by the groom to the woman, and if the woman expresses her will and gives him a ring back, it's actually no longer an acquisition, it's a fair trade, an equal trade, and so it cancels out the wedding. So it is very clearly a wedding between very unequal sides. you could say that in the Jewish wedding ceremony, you don't ask the bride; she accepts, and if she accepts, that's a true marriage. Um, it's a huge subject and much deeper than that. And I think it's so much better. It is, and if you know anything about a really beautiful, spiritually God-based marriage, um, it's not the man running the show. Okay, just like in it's not it's not the Jews running the show. It's all God. So we were given the Torah with God looming over our head, holding a huge mountain on the 6th of Sivan as we came out of Egypt. But thousands of years later, we get exiled. We get slammed. We're in the exile. The temple is in ruins. Temple's destroyed. We should be saying, where was God? Forget about it. You broke the contract. But that is when the Jews said, we actively and in our willfully accept the Torah in Purim, which a lot of people think, Purim, it's not written in the Torah, it's a nothing festival. Everyone knows that Purim looks like it's for the kids, but it's really the deepest, holiest, most spiritual holiday. Yes, Shavuot, one of the three feasts, that's when we were given the Torah. But Purim, which we're not even forbidden from doing work, it's not like Shabbat. And we frequently get drunk because we're commanded to. And kids have a blast on Purim. That's when we look up at God and say, yeah, we can't see you today, but we know you're there. And and now is when we honor our part of the bargain. And that's what Purim is about. That's the connection between Purim and Shavuot. So that's what we call Harkigit. Jews did not willingly accept the Torah. And when we did accept the Torah, there's this other thing. It's a horrible thing I hear people say when they start, trying to become religious or look at religion and think, they say, well, I'll do what I understand and what I choose. Really? You mean you're not going to do tefillin or Shabbat or keep kosher until you've learned all the laws of those things? You're going to keep eating not kosher. You're going to keep breaking Shabbat. You're going to keep because you haven't learned it all yet. Do you know how long it's going to take you to learn all? It takes more than a lifetime. If you're lucky, your children might understand the book that you opened up yesterday. If you're lucky. So on a certain level, we call it Na'aseh v'nishma. First we'll do it, and then we'll learn about it. So you got to do it whether you understand it or not. But you're also required to learn about it. Torah means teaching. So we're not like saying, I've discovered God by sitting on a mountaintop. And the God that I have discovered, I understand this about him and this about him and this is what's good. No. That's not the Jewish approach to all of this. Our approach is we have no choice. We are slaves to God. When he took us out of Egypt, he did not give us our freedom. He took possession of us. It was a transference of ownership. Pharaoh owned us. We were his slaves. God came along and said, there's a new boss on the block, and he took us. And now we serve him. We are his slaves. We have no choice. And we don't serve him out of our understanding. Torah says, don't murder. I got to do that. Do I understand it? I may think I do, but in all honesty, no, I don't. And that's an interesting thing about even so even if I think I understand, there are commandments. Don't commit adultery. Why not? Well, cause it's his wife and is that really why? Is that really why? There are much deeper reasons for that. When we sin, we're doing something so deep that damages things on so many levels. We don't really understand what we're doing. So, on a certain level, we follow the Torah blindly. God told us, do it or I'll kill you. And I'm like, okay. When someone says you do it, I'll kill you, do you ask, hey, why am I doing this? No, you don't. You do it. He's the boss. And in retrospect, and to be honest, I'm not a young guy anymore, it's right. It brought me the sweetest possible life, better than I could have ever imagined. Brought me the most beautiful children, the most beautiful wife, the most beautiful life I live in Eretz Yisrael. And that's all because I said, okay, don't drop the mountain on me. I will follow you blindly. I will do what you say because you said it. I am your slave. I'll do it, and I'll try to understand. And even if I don't understand, I'll do it. I mean, there are some very strange commandments in the Torah, but they work. They really do. So, on Shavuot, we talk about Matan Torah, the giving of Torah, meaning coercive, with the mountain over our head. It's actually a very large, basic concept that has established the nature of Israel, the Am Yisrael, our relationship with God. So, yeah. Okay. That being said, okay. So now a little bit about the holiday itself. As I said, it's the Feast of Weeks. It's one of the 3 pilgrimage festivals. It's when we visited the temple. As I said, I have a personal pet peeve in which, while we're counting 7 complete weeks, in order to bring the Shavuot offering in the temple, Jews will count the 7 weeks and then all of a sudden forget about the temple. And that makes me angry. And they'll say, oh, Shavuot, we're counting the 7 weeks till Shavuot, and it's the giving of Torah. No, we count the 7 weeks, and then it's time to bring the Shavuot offering. Shavuot, as I said, was the first day in which individuals could bring the bikurim, the first fruits, to the temple in Jerusalem. And bikurim is it's a very deep thing if you think about it. Maybe one day we'll give a lesson just on that. But bikurim can only be brought from the first fruits that are grown in the land of Israel. Over and over we see that an essential part of the covenant is the land of Israel. It's the manifestation of the land of Israel. Every time the covenant is mentioned in the Torah, it's always mentioned in terms of the land of Israel. The land of Israel is not our homeland. The land of Israel is the physical manifestation of God being with the Jews. First fruits only in the land of Israel. Okay, and on Shavuot, there's a bunch of regular sacrifices, which you'll remember. Most people think, when they think of temple sacrifices, they think of slaughtering an animal and throwing it on a fire. And that's true for a lot of the sacrifices and not true for other sacrifices. So the Shavuot offering is shtei lechem, 2 loaves of wheat bread. And it's the only time of the year. There's a lot of grain offerings in the temple. There's, of course, the showbreads, which are always there. The showbreads were matzah. They were unleavened. Okay. The only time leavened bread was brought to the temple was on Shavuot, when 2 loaves of wheat bread are brought. And they're described as the bikurim, the first fruits of the wheat harvest. There are other sacrifices brought with them. The way you remember this is when Passover comes, we do the Leil Seder. The next morning we wake up, and the next night that holiday of Passover ends, and we begin the intermediary days of Passover. But when the first day of Passover ends, the Jews went out to the field and they harvested barley. And at night, the next day, pardon me, the next day they brought it back to Jerusalem and they made a barley offering, which was clearly, it was the next day, so it was not leavened. It was prepared in a very specific manner, sifted through, I think, 12 sieves, 13, I'm not sure. And the barley offering was brought the day after the first day of Passover, the second day of Passover.
Eliyahu, we have a question.
Oh, great. Let me look at the Zoom. I'm sorry, I'm reading my notes, so I don't. Yes, Kim. Okay. Ooh, I love questions like that.
Yeah, so were Cain and Abel practicing first fruits?
That's a really good. There's very clearly a connection, and I really don't know what it is. So probably 5 years from now, some person who opens up the Bible for the first time will give me the answer. Or maybe you'll call me next week and say, "Oh, I got the answer." I don't know. I wish I did. That's a beautiful question. That's a yummy question, and I don't know the answer. But it's clearly connected. There's a thing about finding favor in Hashem's eyes. And the fruits were the vegetables. The fruit offering was clearly first fruits, and that's why it did find favor. So, as opposed, you would think the animal offering would be more acceptable because it's an animal; it's more important. But no, so I think that's why I also think that definitely something there. I just don't know what it is offhand. So, gosh, now I'm going to be looking for it. Okay, so on Shavuot, we bring 2 loaves of leavened wheat bread. And the way you can remember it, there's actually a way to remember it, which is Passover, we came out of Egypt, but we hadn't received the Torah. We were free, but we weren't very smart. We didn't have the Bible. And barley is generally considered animal food. It's a very coarse grain. So it feeds our animal spirit, our nefesh baby. It's a very low, it feeds us, but it's not a very refined type of food. As opposed to wheat, you can imagine these fluffy, luscious, two wheat breads, loaves. That feeds a higher spiritual level. It was the it was because when Shavuot received the Torah, we were on a much higher level. We talked about how there were 49 days between leaving Egypt and receiving the Torah on Shavuot. Um, we talk about that when the Jews went down to Egypt, they sunk to the 49th level of impurity. The very lowest level is 50. Had we sunk to the 50th level, we never would have left Egypt. So we were on the next to lowest spiritual level. And when we count the 7 complete weeks of the Omer, the 49 days, every day we're rising up one more level of holiness until we are on a spiritual level where we can receive the Torah. So yeah, so Shavuot is seen as the completion of Passover, which makes sense because Passover, you got the whole thing about the bread, and Shavuot, you got the whole thing about the bread. Passover, you're not allowed to have leavened bread. Shavuot, that's when you can. I mean, you can eat leavened bread in the beginning, but the highest level of eating leavened bread on a spiritual level, that's on Shavuot. Okay. The agriculturally, it marks the wheat harvest. It's also, we said that it's one of the 3 pilgrimage festivals, but it's the only holiday that the date is not specifically mentioned. We're just told to count the 7 complete weeks, and at the end of that, celebrate Shavuot. So its date is not explicitly mentioned. So it's actually kind of integrally connected to Passover. It's the completion of Passover. Okay. Okay. There are 2 things that are done in the synagogue, which I think are very significant. One is they recite the 10 Commandments, and for clear and obvious reasons. As I said, that's when we received the Torah at Mount Sinai. So in the synagogue, they will recite the 10 Commandments. It's not the normal reading, but it's the reading for Shavuot. Another thing that's read, which is really interesting. Oh, by the way, before I get into that, there are several customs connected to Shavuot. One is to stay up all night learning Torah, learning Bible, and the reason is because you're about to receive the Torah. You wanna be there. You wanna do it, even if there's a big mountain over your head. The other thing they do in the synagogue, they do a lot of because it is a holiday, so they have the holiday prayers and all that. But another thing they do that's very interesting is we read the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth is read on Shavuot. And the question is, why the book of Ruth? So the reason is, a lot of reasons are given. One is that Shavuot is the time of harvest. Chag Katsir, we said before. And according to the tradition, the events described in the book of Ruth, the whole thing between Ruth and Boaz happened at the harvest time. I mean, explicitly it happened at the harvest time, and that's around Shavuot. So it's about the same time. Also, it's interesting that Ruth became significant because she was the grandmother, great grandmother. It's not really clear exactly how she was related, but one of her descendants was King David. And according to Jewish tradition, King David was born and died on Shavuot. So Ruth's connection to Shavuot was manifested in her grandson, David. And it's interesting that Ruth, Resh Vav Tav, the gematria, the numerical value is 606. They have 606. Well, we have the Sheva Mitzvot B'nei Noach, the 7 Noahide laws. So if you add those 7 Noahide laws to the 606 of Ruth, 613. And we have a tradition that there are 613 commandments, mitzvot, in the Torah. There's different lists of which ones they are, blah, blah, blah. We call it the Taryag mitzvot. But there are 613 commandments, and that's hinted, as I said, Ruth is 606. And the 7 Noahide laws are makes it 613. I'd like to suggest another reason, though I'm not really clear. The book of Ruth, because she is the grandmother of David, she is the grandmother of Mashiach, of the Messiah. Shavuot, Hashem brought us out of Egypt. I'm sorry, Pesach, Hashem brought us out of Egypt. Shavuot is, as we said, the completion of Pesach. We've counted the 7 weeks. We have totally fixed, done a tikkun on the wheat. And now it's Shavuot, when we can appear before God in completeness. We've received the Torah. We're going to give him the Torah. And we're bringing wheat, leavened bread, and that's the time of redemption, and we can stand before God in that night. And King David is the one who makes it possible, which is kind of weird, because King David is not descended from Jews. Ruth is from Moab, which should be forbidden. So when you read Ruth, there are a couple things I want you to pay careful attention to. Actually, there's one thing I want you to pay careful attention to. There are a lot of specific laws that are mentioned in the book of Ruth. One is what we call peah, leket shichcha v'peah, the gleanings of the field that are left for the poor, which allow Ruth to exist. Another thing is what conversion is in Judaism. And if I make some assumptions here about other faiths, I apologize. These are assumptions I understand. And I could be wrong about them. I probably am. In Islam, there's a statement of faith and you become Muslim. In Christianity, my understanding is you believe in Jesus, so you become Christian. You become a Christian. In Judaism, that's not the case. The main point is not whether you believe in God. The main point is, are you a part of the Jewish people? Like Ruth said, entreat me not to leave you, or to return from God. Your people will be my people. And her connection to the land of Israel. Where you die, I will die. The land of Israel. Becoming a Jew means joining the Jewish people. The Jewish people necessarily believe in God. As I said, against their will. We have no choice. But it's not a matter of your choice. It's not a matter of your faith. If you decide to become part of the Jewish nation, well, that's conversion. Now you are part of the Jewish nation. Why anyone would want to do that, I don't know. Like the saying goes, we're the chosen people, but wouldn't it be nice if once in a while God picked someone else? So I'm kidding. I love being Jewish. I love my history. Yeah. And another thing, this is something that unfortunately some people, even people who are familiar with the Bible, might not be familiar with. Something happens in the end of the book of Ruth. And there's a thing called levirate marriage. In Hebrew, it's called yibum. When a man marries a woman, he is not taking a woman unto himself. He's bringing her into the family. He happens to be her husband. But should he die without any children, well, she now has to marry a male relative of his, preferably a brother, though we never see, the Torah says she should marry his brother, but we never see any cases where she actually marries his brother. We have cases of yibum, of levirate marriage that are described in the Torah. The clearest one is Yehuda and Tamar. Tamar marries the son of Yehuda. He doesn't have a son with her, so the next son, Onan, and then she's waiting for the third son, the youngest son, and then eventually she's with Yehuda. And that's Yibum. And what is Yibum? The term for Yibum that's used in the Torah to describe this form of union between the widow and the dead husband, the relative of the dead husband, is called lehachayot zera, to cause his seed to come to life, resurrection of the dead. Okay? You see that explicitly in the book of Ruth. Boaz says, there's a male relative who's closer than me. He has the mitzvah. So he approaches the male relative, and the male relative says, no, I don't want it. So Boaz says, okay, I will. And when the child is born, Naomi says, bring me my son. It is her son. It is not Ruth's. Because Naomi had a husband and two sons who died. So this son is coming to continue their line. He belongs to Naomi and not to Ruth. Yibum is a huge, huge thing to learn. And there's also a very strong side to say that Lot and his daughters was Yibum, because the term Lehachayot Zera is also used there. Me'av, Moav, from the father. So if we see that Ruth comes from Yibum, Boaz comes from Yehuda and Tamar, also from Yibum. Mashiach comes from Yibum, from all sides of his family, from levirate marriage. And we learn about it in the book of Ruth. So when you read the book of Ruth, pay careful attention to this aspect of levirate marriage. It's not something that's too familiar to Westerners, but from what I've heard, it was actually the common practice in ancient times when Judaism was when Israel was tribal. We had tribal lands. Your neighbors were from your tribe. So if you didn't have children, the tribe risked losing that land. The land was in perpetuity, eternally, to that tribe. And the tribe went to great lengths to make sure that the tribal land was kept. And that's what Boaz was doing with Ruth. He was being true to his tribe of Yehuda, because there was land that Naomi's husband had left, and it was going to go up for grabs. And Boaz said, we can't let that happen. So I'm going to wed Ruth, keep the land in the family, and create descendants who will inherit that land. So that's the book of Ruth that we also read on Shavuot. This has been great. It's been long. I apologize for going over. Right, exactly. Oh, beautiful. Wow, Kim, you're good at this. Yes, the neighborhood the neighborhood women named Ruth's child Oved, meaning servant, meaning he was a servant of God. Eved Hashem. I actually had a friend once named Oved, so it's a very special name to me. He had to grow into his name. Yeah, but why did the neighbor women name Ruth's child? Because the child wasn't hers. It was Yibum. Okay. Like I said, Shavuot next Tuesday night. One other minhag I forgot to mention. One other tradition is on Shavuot, Jews traditionally eat dairy. Normally, they eat dairy during the day. Normally, there's a festive meal at night to bring the holiday in where we eat meat. And when we separate between milk and meat, there are different customs as to how long you wait. Complicated issue. But when you can, people start eating cheesecake. Cheesecake is huge. Bagels and lox, bagels and cream cheese. There's a very special thing to eat dairy on Shavuot day. And since you learn all night, I actually do not eat meat at night because I drink my coffee with milk. And if I'm going to stay up and learn, I got to drink the coffee. So there is a special tradition to eat dairy. They say something that doesn't make sense, but I'll tell you what one of the reasons given for the tradition is that before we were given the Torah, we didn't know the laws of kashrut, so our dishes weren't kosher, so we had to wait until we koshered our dishes before we could start eating meat. I don't get it, because you need kosher dishes for milk too, but that's what they say. So it might be an urban myth. You get those. So break out your favorite. There's so many beautiful. I actually prefer dairy, even though it doesn't always sit very well with me. But it's the day to break out the dairy. Jewish dairy food is really amazing. You have cheese blitzes, blueberry blitzes. You have how many different cheesecakes and cheesecake contests can you have? There's fish, though I should add that Ashkenazi eat fish with dairy, but the Sephardim do not eat fish with dairy. So Ashkenazim have bagels and lox. Sephardim do not have bagels and lox. This is all traditions. It's not specifically written in the Torah. So I don't know what you guys like so far as dairy, but there it is. You break out your dairy. If you want to, there you go. Shavuot is dairy food. Anyway, I guess that's all I have to say about the holiday up till now. As you can see, Shavuot, there's a lot to say. There's an awful lot to say. Thanks so much, Kim. Yeah, and stay up and study if you can. It's a great time. There's in our town, we have roaming hordes of children who roam from house to house and get cheesecake and learn Torah. So all night long, it's their chance to stay up all night. So there's also that, and also organizing different learning groups all night is also a wonderful thing to do. Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much, Kim. Be blessed.
Thank you.
Okay. See y'all later. I tell you, I get more out of this than you guys, I'm sure. I love it. It's a great chance for me to keep learning. Thank you all so much. Be blessed.